Welcome to another broadcast of Global TV, a broadcast service of globalbusinessnews.net.
Now, here's your host, Ed Cohen.
Hi, it's Ed Cohen. I'm in San Diego and your broadcast host today on Global TV Talk Show. You know, the whole world is watching and listening to what we're talking about, not only in the political mess that's going on right now, but how companies are helping their employees deal with stress and working from home, working from anywhere. And feedback is what it's all about. In other words, employee communications and how people are communicating in these strange times where facial expressions count, lighting counts, sound quality counts. So just so you know, this program is being broadcast right now live worldwide. There are people in the background who do not want to be visible. It's quite all right, but it's very okay to use the chat and introduce each other. The idea that this is a meeting room, like we used to have live conferences. Someday we might do it again. So we have with us an amazing cast, and we'll be getting others involved as well. So Diane Devitt is a recovering actress and producer, and and is now a media expert. And we've been blessed to have her teach us how to look better and talk better on TV. So just do about 30 seconds, Diane, please.
No, just glad to be here as always, Ed. I appreciate it, and I appreciate your introduction. I for those of you, let's quash the rumor. I'm an aspiring actress, you know, not a recovering one, but events and production have been my life, and I love the new landscape we're in and the opportunities that it's bringing. So thanks.
All right.
Thanks for having me here.
No, you bet. Yeah, thank you, and looking forward to your contributions because we're all about communications today. All right. And,
Yes.
and that's what's key. I'm getting messages here on the phone. Let's go to Madrid. Sergey, welcome. This is the first time we're actually seeing each other, but we've had other communications. So what is your position in AbbVie?
In AbbVie, I take care of talent management. Here, I'm more in an academic capacity. I'm a professor at IE Business School here in Madrid, Spain. But I also speak, research, write, specifically around feedback. My PhD was in personal branding. So everything around communication, performance, and talent. Okay,
that's very cool. We'll get back to you very, very quickly. Andrew Bruzzi had a former life in Walmart, an executive position. What did you do there?
Sure. So I led the global mobility program, so moving talent globally. So since then, I started Vendium Global, which is an HR consultancy firm helping to kind of integrate technology solutions to help bring people together.
Great. Thank you very much. And you're heavily involved in DE&I, right?
I am, yes. So that is something that I'm a strong believer that the global mobility space has the ability to champion that more than most. Since we've always been in the intercultural space, helping people connect across cultures, then functionally, that's what DEI is helping people of different backgrounds kind of take a moment of understanding, get to know each other, connect better, learn to communicate better, and then kind of move forward together stronger.
John Schultz is an auto industry executive for many years, has lived and worked in Asia, has been president of various chambers of commerce overseas. John, welcome again. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Ed. We're really pleased to sponsor the program today and looking forward to a wonderful program.
Thank you. We're going to get into all of this with John in just a few minutes. So we do have the use of video, you know, here we are in TV land. So video is really important. In about 18 minutes from now, we're going to have around 4 minutes of videos. And then we'll discuss the use of video in training and feedback, especially working from home. And how, Sergey, one of the issues from Fair Talk, the book, is people don't advance because they don't communicate clearly to their bosses, or they're afraid to, or they do it wrong. Isn't that correct?
I guess that the answer is already in the question.
Yeah.
And it's more complex than that. Do we know that there is less feedback going upward? Absolutely. Is there less feedback the higher you go on the hierarchical ladder? 100%. The higher you go, the less feedback that you get. Is there a sense of anxiety and maybe sometimes fear to give feedback to your boss? Yes. Does it mean that we shouldn't be doing that? Absolutely not. Actually, there is a lot of research saying that when employees give feedback to their bosses can be more creative, they become better leaders. And actually, the findings indicate that the bosses are really eager to listen to feedback to their employees, particularly to negative feedback. Which might fly in the face of some popular psychology. Actually, the bosses, when they hear feedback from their employees, they don't have this feeling of threat just because of the differences in their status and power. Bosses have more power by definition. Therefore, when they hear negative, constructive feedback from their employee, they take it as it should be, as information that can help me improve. Therefore, absolutely, that should be happening, and that should be happening more. If we look at the practice, at what's happening in the organizations, I'm pretty sure that we can go around the room, but also we can go and check with other companies how many of them are instituting upward feedback practices. A lot. And actually, even in Google search, the 90-degree feedback, that phrase has jumped up in searches over the past couple of years. So, and that's an indirect indication that yes, many more companies are looking at enabling that communication, not only bottom up, but also from bottom up, but also sideways. Now we're also talking more and more about peer feedback. So feedback is no longer boss employee, but also in other different directions in the organization.
Sergey, explain again 90-degree feedback. What is that?
That is a degree in one direction. So if we say, that's a great question, if we say that 360-degree feedback is when you get information about your performance and behavior from your boss, from your peers, from your clients, and from your subordinates, yeah, we call it 360 feedback. When you get it from one direction, we call it 90-degree feedback. And typically when we talk about it, when we write about it, it's the feedback from the subordinate to the manager. While it can be in any direction, most often when we hear the phrase 90-degree feedback, it's this bottom-up feedback to the superiors.
So is there training for employees, whether it's video or however, is there training to employees how to talk back to the boss? Or how not to?
I'm not sure if the word talk back is the right here. I strongly advise people against talking back. Giving feedback to their bosses, or providing information that can help their bosses become more effective. Absolutely. And in our practice, it's no different than the training courses on feedback to any employee. For example, if you pick up a copy of Fair Talk, you will find our model there. 3-step model. Tell me why it matters. Tell me how I did. Tell me what I should be doing differently. Right? So first, the first one, tell me why it matters. Until you've explained why, until you've explained why it's personally relevant, until you have established that connection, the emotional hook. You need to find the emotional hook on which to hang your information, and then people start listening. First step. Second step, okay, how I'm doing, what's happening, what's happened, facts, examples, the actual meat of the feedback, and then how I should be doing, what should I be doing going forward? That is your expectations. And this is the feedback model that we teach to any employee. But now let's apply it to the conversation employee to the manager. Why does it matter? Well, that's how I am, and I believe I can be more productive if you do X. Over the couple of weeks, that's what I observed. that's how it made me feel, or that's the impact that I observed in our team. So maybe we could try, or why don't we have an experiment? People don't like the word feedback, but people love the word experiment. Let's experiment with something new. Or another word that people love, let's noodle on this. Don't give feedback. So my new mantra, don't give feedback. Just noodle on something with people. They love noodling. They love experimenting. They love, okay, why don't we try something else? And that's, you remove the fear, and it's no longer about this word feedback. It's about the information that helps you perform better, the information that helps you develop, the information that positions you for a greater job that helps you advance in your career. And then it becomes a conversation. It becomes a dialogue. It's no longer about this nasty word feedback. Feedback has a bad rap. So maybe feedback has a marketing problem. That's it. Feedback has a marketing problem. So we need to be better at rebranding that.
All right, let's go to Chase Eskelson. He's an educator. Chase, online education is all about communications, right?
100% agree. And I will say, Ed, as I say at the beginning of every time that we talk, what the world is experiencing right now with digital education is not true digital education, right? It's emergency distance learning. And so I really try to separate what has been happening in 2020 from what we've been doing for the last 20 years, because there's so much involved in what we do that makes it successful that is lacking from what most people are seeing. For instance, feedback, exactly what we're talking about. Teachers are used to giving feedback as an expectation. You get your paper back from the teacher and there's big red letters, great job, A. Okay, that is feedback technically, but there's a disconnect, especially as people have moved digital. Great job is the expectation, but where is the application? And this kind of evolves right into the business world as well. We can tell our employees, hey, great job, but what does that tell them? Instead, when we see that paper as an instructor, the response should be, I really liked how you drew out this point, and this is how it applies to this situation in the assignment. Great work. Now that feedback has feet to it, right? There's something to bite into. And both from an education perspective, that's just effective, applicable feedback, isn't it? It's not happening in today's world. But with a good digital education, there's feedback mechanisms, and it's the same thing with our employees. When we work with our teachers, hey, I saw how you handled that class. Here was the problem. You handled it flawlessly. I loved that you did X, Y, Z to control that situation. Great work. Now it becomes applicable. And that's going to be so important moving forward in the digital workspace that we live in, is providing more than just a 2 or 3 word good work, but here's why it was good. Or on the inverse, here's why I think that this situation could be handled just a little different. Here's some ideas, A, B, C. So, you know, that's kind of, Ed, part of the things that we've talked about quite a bit with our teachers. And Julie, who you mentioned before, is the premier teacher trainer in the United States. So we're really happy to have her on our team.
Yeah, we're going to show that video in just a few minutes. So I want to introduce Yvonne Quay again from World Bank Family Network. So right now you're dealing a lot with people from around the world, with employees and video, right? All right, turn on your voice, please.
Yes, 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 we are dealing with, actually they're completely virtual. And I suppose in terms of feedback in the virtual world, it's really learning to look at the screen, and you can tell, I mean, in a way we're closer because our faces are much more visible than you would be in the whole room. Using those facial cues to get some sort of feedback. But I just wanted to respond to what Chase was saying, and I think that's incredibly useful, that whole idea of giving your feedback some features, so that there's something that I can take from it, and I know why it's good from a coaching perspective, then I can do more of it. So that's useful. But I think the other point I wanted to ask Sergey, I guess, is this whole issue of psychological safety, of talking to my boss. I can think of many organizational cultures where there is no psychological safety. Would I really want to give feedback to my boss? That's the question I have in my mind. Would I, especially in COVID times where it's hard to find a job, do I really want to tell him or her that, hey, these are the areas where you could improve? I'm not sure about that. And what do you have advice?
So you're absolutely right, Yvonne. Psychological safety is critical for giving feedback. Just this sense that I can speak up my mind without fear of retribution because we're all in this together. And hey, if I have some, I always, when I coach leaders, particularly those who are unwilling to give feedback, I ask them, if somebody has information on how you can become more effective, would you like to hear it? And the answer is always yes. Okay, then why aren't you withholding that information from someone else? And it always comes down to, I'm afraid to damage the relationship. I don't have time. I don't know how to. The person will go to ER. So they will always come up with excuses for not doing that. But deep down, after you've asked your 5 whys and after you've dug down, it's I don't want. It feels uncomfortable. I don't feel like it. But then the second part of coaching is, what's the alternative? And the alternative is, okay, status quo. If you don't like something and you don't do anything and you just stay there, well, and there are instances when it's best just to suck it up. And if the relationship with your boss is bad, don't give feedback. But particularly negative feedback. You're absolutely right. So, but now it's a different conversation. It's the conversation about the quality of leadership.
Sergey, may I ask if I can jump in just for a sec? Do women do it better, or do they do it not better?
Feedback, you mean?
Yeah.
There is no indication that women are better feedback givers than men. We can talk about the percentages and differences in the quality of feedback, what the feedback is given on, but better or not, no study has indicated that. There is no conclusive evidence for it. We know that men, for example, tend to give feedback on skills to other men more, but they will give feedback on behaviors and personality to women. That's one of very conclusive findings, and it actually plays into this whole thing on why women aren't advancing. They don't get enough information, useful information for their career progression, because women tend to get feedback from men, and men are typically those who are in charge in terms, oh, you need to be nicer to others. Or I heard a story, bored to the CEO, to a female CEO, you need to hug your staff more. Real example. While giving feedback to men, they might say, well, why don't you change your negotiation approach next time? Or why don't you rearrange the story so that it feels more compelling? Women, when they give feedback either to men or women, tend to be very doing that equally. So there is no difference. When women give feedback to men or women, well, equal split on behaviors and skills. There is no difference. So that's
Ed.
We can talk about feedback and gender for hours. I don't want to steal from everyone's time.
Oh no, I want to jump in here. I do. That gets me going. This gender issue, because I remember this thing happening. My colleague told me what he actually said to our manager one day. This was a few years ago. And I said to him, did you really say that? He said, yeah. So I said, so what was her reaction? And he said, she didn't say anything. And at that point, I said to him, wow, if I had said the same thing, identical words, because of my gender, I would be described as difficult or aggressive. She's difficult, she's aggressive. But when a guy says it, all of a sudden, the same words become standing up for himself. And when you stand up for yourself, that's okay. But, you know, us women, we're just aggressive and difficult. And I do think that plays into why women don't progress. Because you stand up for your skills and we're difficult. So who do you want when you want to promote? The one who stands up for himself or the difficult woman?
Do you remember that story of how Travis Kalanick was ousted from Uber? And at that point in time, when he was ousted, Ariane Huffington, who's on board of Uber, said, "We won't tolerate brilliant jerks anymore." That was so powerful. We won't tolerate brilliant jerks anymore. And if you look at the values of Uber in the times of Travis Kalanick, one of the value was super pumpedness. And so the employees were expected to be super pumped and just aggressively go for it. Another value was toe stepping. Don't be afraid to step on other people's toes, just go for that. What type of culture do you think that drives? Exactly, the culture where, not the culture of psychological safety, who was in charge, what was happening. And remember how the end of Travis Kalanick started when a female engineer posted on social media a case of sexual harassment. And that's, you see how this all translates: leadership, values, culture, behaviors, communication.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
When Dara started as the new CEO, culture, feedback, psychological safety, pillar number one. And he invited Francis Frey, a professor from Harvard, as academic as residence, to spend, I don't remember, 6-9 months at Uber, just working on that transformation, because that was important. But now they are much less likely to tolerate brilliant jerks.
Thank you, Sergey. Let's go to Nazia. I want to introduce Nazia Rashid in the Dubai area. Say hi.
Hello, everybody. Yes, so Nazia Rashid, I'm based in Dubai. I've been in Dubai for the past 15 years and basically from Pakistan. I've worked for some multinationals company, currently working for Serva, for Honeywell. Of course, I get an experience, a very rich experience of multiculturalism here in Dubai. I mean, most of them have already visited here. So an extensive learning experience, managing multicultural people, management, companies, you know, all that stuff. And this is a very important topic because I ask a lot of questions and I'm a person who has a lot of feedback. So how it has affected me for the past years in my career is not good. And so when we talk about this subject, it says so many stories, your own stories. I mean, I don't even have to go and read anybody. It says that even in a culture like this, where we encourage multiculturalism and listening skills and listen to everybody, teamwork, I have experienced that feedbacks are not taken so lightly. And my own one small story is I'm working for a multinational company and we have a team and we have to work together very efficiently together because our performance is judged on the team performance, right? So we support each other, even if even somebody doesn't want, there's no other way out, you know, if one dies, everybody dies. So, and there in our team meetings, which usually used to happen every other day, I felt like everybody used to pass on their questions to me. And I started off like a hero and then started ending like looking like the biggest rebellion or an enemy or somebody. So my team leader used to tell me, kept on saying me that, you know what, why don't you have these questions before, talk to me first and then put up in a team? Or things like you had a negative feedback and then put everybody down, their morals. And I was like, these questions are coming from the team itself. How come I have questions that putting everybody's morale down? I need answers. Please focus on the answers, please. That's what you need to do. Just it's constantly happen. I faced resentment. There was obvious physical, that kind of, discrimination. And you're talking about a big multicultural company. So I think not everybody is born with this quality of listening and taking things positively. This could be a learned skill, and it is a learned skill. And we talk about management courses, and I don't know if there is any management courses who teach managers to be better at taking feedbacks. I think this should be incorporated now in everybody, and this should be accountable. Like I was reading the article, and the first step was accountability. You have to in yourself, you should feel that you're accountable. And if you're not getting any feedback, there's some problem. There's serious problem if people are not coming feedback or negative. They might be hating in your heart, and at the front you're smiling. That's something I would not want. If I'm managing a team, I would want more clarity, more transparency, and so feedback. I always had feedback. I always have points to add. I'm very passionate when I'm working, so I always have something in my mind. But so one last thing. So you said don't talk. I was listening to what's his name? Yeah. So I was listening. So don't take it as talking back. Take it as feedback, right? But I have seen a live example where feedback turned into talking back, and eventually that person was made redundant. That was the only person who was made redundant because it was so obvious. It was reaching somewhere else. So because she had good feedback, she always contributed very well. She had something very unique, but that was kind of showing that maybe she knows a little better. This is how the management, this is also in the hands of the manager to make it look like, okay, fine, she's a contributor rather than, oh, do you know more than me? So that feedback turned into talking back in my own experience. So, and eventually we left the feedback giver. So what
may I comment on just a few items?
Yes, please.
So what I hear, Nazia, and thank you so much for sharing personal examples. That's so powerful. That's when it comes to life. There is a difference between the what and the how. Is feedback important? Yes. How it's given matters a lot, whether it will be heard, whether it will be welcome, and so forth. It's a skill that can be trained, and giving feedback appropriately and asking for feedback appropriately factors into your personal brand. That's how you will be known, and you might be known as the stone in the shoe, or you might be known as someone with unique ideas that everyone goes to when they need an insight. And there is a difference, cultural differences, both in terms of geographical cultures and corporate cultures. There are those where the squeaking wheel gets the grease, if you know the saying. And there are those cultures where the nail that sticks out gets banged on the head. So which culture are you operating in? Do the scanning of the environment and then decide, because there is no one size fits all.
So we want to go to John and Mark and Yvonne, and especially Diane, and Safoni, Margaret. Everyone gets to talk here. We're going to pause for a sec here, just about 4 minutes. Paul, ready to roll it?
One of the greatest things about attending the Bridge School is that students are able to truly move at their own pace. Students who are advanced learners can move more quickly through the curriculum. Students who are struggling can slow down and take a little bit more time and get additional resources from their teachers. Also, the typical school in a school district is following state set guidelines and standards, and they're following the pace of the entire class. And that isn't always conducive to students. the Bridge School partners with StrongMind to provide this award-winning curriculum. And with that, students are able to trust and know that they're learning a curriculum that is built on standards that are national standards, that are research-based, and they're chronological based on how students learn. So students can actually go forward and learn that at their own pace and not have to worry if they are meeting the standards that are set forth by the state. They can know that they're learning what needs to be mastered in that course to be successful.
This episode of Global TV Talk Show is brought to you by
The Bridge School, the accredited international online private school of choice at bridgek12.org.
Porch Light Rental and Destination Services. Reduce renter lump sum or managed relocation costs. Find them at porchlightrental.com.
CubeMonk, featuring the world's first smart cube. Welcome to the future of moving and relocation at cubemonk.com.
Primestone Partners, featuring corporate, government, and developer housing solutions. Find them at primestonepartners.com.
And by Airs. With our full range of services, we can help design and manage your international relocation. Find us at airs.com. And by International Auto Source. We are the vehicle experts for expats, featuring all major brands of automobiles. On the web at intlauto.com.
Hi, Rob and Eva. I just want to say thank you guys to support me to purchase my new vehicle here in USA. And we are enjoying a lot this new vehicle, Mateo as well. Say hello, Mateo, to Rob and Eva. And thank you so much. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
As an expat moving to the USA, relocating is exciting, but it can also be stressful. Getting a car, truck, or SUV for personal transportation is usually a high priority. That's where International Auto Source comes in. We make getting the vehicle you want for your work assignment or academic program easy, so you're ready to drive when you arrive. Our product specialists have helped over 50,000 expatriates with their personal transportation needs, making us the largest international auto retailer in the world. International Auto Source gives you flexible payment options to buy, lease, or rent a vehicle from the world's leading auto brands, arrange financing on a purchase or lease without a U.S. credit history, social security number, or driving record, get full insurance coverage, and get approved easily through our low-rate factory-backed financing programs. And because we're an authorized distributor of the world's leading automotive brands, our no-haggle prices are competitive, and the buying experience is hassle-free. We'll even guarantee your new vehicle will be ready the day you arrive. With over 20 years of experience in the global community, we are the vehicle experts for expats. We are International Auto Source.
Thank you, Paul Johnston, for excellent work. Let's go to John Schultz very quickly. We don't need more sales pitch, but tell us about you working in Japan and Taiwan and the cultural issues.
Sure. I was actually, the conversation that I was listening to, Ed, was really interesting because I was thinking about what we do today at International Auto Source. And this isn't a sales pitch, but we have sales consultants who will either communicate through electronically or over the phone. And one in the morning, they're dealing with a customer in Australia. And in the afternoon, they're dealing with a customer in Germany. And the ability to, the word that Sergey used was feedback. The ability to not talk back, but to get feedback from the customer as to what that person needs in terms of a vehicle is a skill that I think Nazir was talking about it. It can be taught. We spend a lot of time training our sales consultants to give and take that feedback with a customer to make sure the customer gets the vehicle that they need. So it's involved in the sales process as well as in the leader and employee process, the annual review process.
So when you were involved in Asia, you were very active. You were president of local chambers of commerce and business associations. So with this penetration into the community and connection, so was feedback on a nice to have but not necessary basis, or what?
Well, it's interesting how you get feedback. I think Sergey was talking about it in the different cultures. In Japan, where I lived for 6 years, it's very difficult to get feedback. It's just not part of the culture. That Japan is very much a culture of the nail that sticks up gets hammered down. Korea, on the other hand, where I lived for 5 years, you're always getting feedback. And sometimes it's very brutal feedback. That's just part of the culture of Koreans. Where you do in the Japanese culture, and I'm speaking very broadly here, but where you do get feedback is when you go out in the evening with your coworkers and your peers, and you have a couple of beers and you have some dinner, some food. That's where the formality of the office goes away, and you do get sometimes unsolicited feedback about how one might be doing as a leader or a manager, or how one might be performing in their job. And that's always an interesting experience to go through that.
Yeah, Chase Eskelson, how do you get a water cooler feeling from video?
It's important to create those opportunities. Ed, you've created one here where we all get a chance to comment and talk. But with the Bridge School, which we just saw the video for, and for our other programs and schools, most of our staff is remote. And so creating opportunities to get people to talk about things that are not necessarily related to work helps to build those relationships. It allows them to build that one-on-one relationship where they could call and say, hey, I've got some feedback that I want to present to you. And it's a little tricky. It's not how it used to be, but one of the benefits is we have tools in our tool belt that we didn't have in person. And I know people don't look at it that way a lot of times, but with Zoom, you've got breakout room options. That's a tool that we can employ. And so we can break out, hey, I know you and you think about these things. I've talked to you both about them separately. We're going to take 10 minutes during our professional development time, and I'm going to break you out, and there's no agenda. Just talk, start figuring out who the other person is. Here's a couple of questions that can help guide the conversation. But you really want to build that method in to put people together where they're now willing and able to call that person on the phone should a problem, concern, or future issue arise. And without that, and that's how people did it in the office. So now we've got to be proactive in figuring those pieces out.
So what we have coming up over the next 6 months or so with Chase and Verano and Bridge School and others will be a series of educational breakouts. And this is really going to be interesting stuff. Sergey, I want you to come back and be a participant in that. Your perspective from academics will be extremely valuable. Let's go to Diane. Diane Devitt is a media expert, a trainer, as I've mentioned before. But what do you see here? You've been on several of my programs already, and I'm grateful, but this is a little different, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And I've been taking notes from a few different perspectives and hats that I wear. So I'm an educator. I've been an adjunct professor at NYU for over 25 years. I teach conference and event management, which all of you can share what this year is like teaching a global audience conference and live events. Yes. So we had to pivot quickly, as I did in March, and amazingly, the students, their adaptability to the potential of this new landscape is remarkable to me. I do it in a very positive way. I tell them that, which they are, they're making history, and live meetings will never be the same. They will always be a hybrid, or whatever form they morph into. By next year at this time, we'll be able to tell more. So it's that hat that I'm wearing. And then the other thing is with feedback. Now, I've been in my role as a producer, an executive producer in production and meetings and events. That's what my career path was. I always took the position that my input to the C-suite and to the people who were at the top of the food chain in the respective events I was working on, that it was my responsibility to give them feedback. And I always did, in a respectful way, behind closed doors, choosing the right words. And I always did it with the, and I know I got away with a few different things just because of my personality and who I am. When I look back now, like, it's different than being an employee, isn't it? So I was an outside consultant. I'm a producer. I'm planning a meeting. I'm planning an event that there's a lot at stake for that executive. And if I don't give them honest feedback, or I don't tell them the scuttlebutt that's going on or the politics that's going on, no one does. And in my career, I've had employees come up to me and say, "You told them that?" I would say, yes, but I would never tell them what I really told them. And I felt that that was my role and that was my responsibility. And also that was my value. So in some ways, yes, with what Sergey's saying, Sergey, I can't wait to buy your book, because that's going to be a present for a lot of the people I know. And I think it's a great way to just, have it anonymously mailed to someone's house, since they're all at home right now, from Amazon. But I do believe, and Ed, you've been in a management position. It's all how it's done. Now let me shift to the third topic. The women, we do have a different playing field. There's no doubt about it. I mean, I've been in, which is what this is not about, but we do have a different playing field. And at times I've been in situations where I've gone in to give advice, and I have to tell you, if someone tells me that I'm nice, that's the worst 4-letter word that you can use for me in business right now, because it makes me feel so ineffective. I don't want to be Pollyanna. I am a nice person, but so is Chase, and so is Andrew. But I want to learn how to negotiate, right? Or I'm going to make you suffer and not stop talking to you, because that's the only way I know how to negotiate. So anyway, we all have our own perspectives on this, but I think from my unique position as a producer, I had a lot of one-on-one accessibility with walking into the corner office, and I always respected that, and I took it to heart, because I knew if I didn't get to, if Andrew was doing a meeting, Andrew, there's objectives and goals and strategies, but you also know that you have a hidden agenda, and you have and it's nothing wrong. It's like you want to accomplish something for your investment. If you don't tell the person who's going to make that happen for you what your real vision is, it's not going to happen. So I think establishing a trustworthy relationship is key.
Okay, Mark Colo, in the transportation relocation business based in California in the West. Mark, welcome again. So what have you learned so far here today?
I've learned a lot. And I've thought of a lot of scenarios that I've been in business that deal with communication and more importantly, effective communication. I think it takes a lot of effort to get to what Sergey is talking about with this 360-degree communication, where you're working from all angles. And the companies that can get to that point have such a great advantage over other companies. But our industry, as you know, Ed, is fraught with mom and pops. And we have so many companies in our industry that we have to work with and interact with where it's a single owner. And maybe the IQ in that company is in that owner's mind, all within his control. I worked for one company. I shared an example on one of your shows, Ed, about a company I worked for, where the brother of an employee that worked there told me in confidence once, "Don't tell Mark, don't tell anyone I told you this, but I'm going to predict that this company will shrink to the IQ of 2 people." And that was the owner and his right-hand hatchet man. So you have to be teachable if you're the owner. If you're a manager, you have to be humble. I think you have to acknowledge others' contributions and communicate effectively and robustly. I think that's probably the most important things you can do as a boss and as an owner.
Okay, Safoni and Margaret, do you want to speak?
This is good. Thank you. And it's Stephanie. And I consider myself a people champion. So this is a great topic that you all are talking about today. And some of the things I was thinking about is, an organization has to be grounded first, have that environment where there is psychological safety, as we talked about before, but also the core values, so that you have the ground rules for having that feedback conversation. You have to be set in those ground rules. And then psychological meaningfulness, like if we're all going toward a common purpose, like for example, Walmart, we save money so people can live better. Now, if I'm encouraged and purposeful in that we're all working to save people money so they can live better, that senior that can get more food in their basket because of the prescriptions are less expensive, then I'm going to be empowered to give feedback because I'm working toward a greater good or a greater cause. And so that empowers me. But then I think about when we were talking about, this new environment of Zoom and how we're navigating through that, it's the variety. You still have to give that, stay connected with your teams. You still have to give feedback. You still have to give effective feedback. But if you always, I'll give an example. We use this term called coaching. And so if someone was going to be coached, they would go talk in the office. So every time you ask someone to come back to the office, they think automatically, I'm going to be coached. And so even on Zoom, you have to have variety, or the way we're communicating distance, it has to be, today we're just going to have coffee outside and just talk about, a different topic. Maybe it's not even work related. On this next meeting that we have, maybe we're just going to brainstorm and we're not going to talk about, feedback, so to speak, but we're just going to brainstorm. If you break it up, then you don't get that, feeling every time you get into feedback. It becomes more of a conversation. And then I think that we have to solicit and offer feedback. So when you see women, who may shy away from asking for feedback, solicit it from them, or even keep asking for feedback. But then I want to piggyback on what Diane talked about. And she mentioned, that women having kind of not a disadvantage, but it's just different, right? You see it differently. One of the terms I've always heard when associated with women in leadership is emotional. You're too emotional. That is offensive to me. Diane said there was another word that was offensive to her, but offensive to me is emotional. What is that? And then I'll just end with this. I've been called a cheerleader because I'm a people champion. I mean, I come to work, I'm ready to go. I'm like, hey, let's go. But if you always see me as a cheerleader and you don't take me seriously when it's time to provide feedback or or negotiate that business deal, then I've been typecast, right? And so these are the things that we want to really help folks navigate through in the workforce. And that's these type of, those are those unconscious biases where you see folks as cheerleaders or emotional. So that's all I'll say about that. But I think I'm honored to be on this panel and talk about this discussion.
So I want to.
Ed, can I just chime in one quick thought here, because this could be another topic for another show. I'm giving you feedback right now. Okay, thank you. what's coming up here is the difference between emotional quotient and right, and companies now are looking for creativity. They're hiring someone like Diane Devitt, who has no idea how to, what their business, what their vertical is, but what's your how are you looking at this? How do you see this? So just food for thought for another time, EQ and IQ in the workplace, and what's more important and what gets people's productivity.
How about November 11? Is that a good?
I'm not doing this alone. Everyone on this call is responsible to show up. What?
All right. Well, I'm open that date right now anyway. So I want to say that this black shirt I'm wearing is I got in Walmart last year. And I got a blue one, a black one, and it's like $6 each. And they haven't shrunk. So this is great. Okay. So Margaret, please say hi. Introduce yourself.
Hi, Margaret Wilson. I'm program manager at a tech company right now, and a soul transformation coach by passion. So I deal with a lot of, deal is the wrong word, I help a lot of women really get that confidence and get to the core of where they want to go and how they want to approach life and communication. And I mean, there's so much on this call that I want to unpack, but I'm going to just echo some of the things that I've heard, like culture and environment, right, is so huge. Not being able to feel safe, and especially as a woman or a minority in general, a woman of color or any other type of minorities, right? It's encouraged to keep it down and not get certain attention put on you. So I love this whole conversation about how that is the priority of every company. Like, we need to make sure that culture and environment is safe to even provide feedback. And then, hold leaders to the same standards that you hold employees to, right? Leaders are not supposed to just provide feedback and have good employees that listen and follow rules. You're supposed to be the example of what you want your employees to do, to accept, to listen to. And I think this conversation is doing that, right? Like, you're not above or below me in this world. You might be in this company and you might make more money than me, but my manager always says this: everybody puts their pants on the same way, one leg after the other. And that really puts us all on the same playing field. So yeah, it's just, I just want to say that as a woman and a woman of color, I can say that I could say the same exact thing that my manager said, but when my manager says it and he's a male, it gets perceived differently. And I agree. It's always an emotional reaction versus a leadership reaction.
Sergey, it's yours. You have the mic, Sergey.
Just a reflection that emotions are always part of us. And by definition, then, leadership and emotions are intertwined. You can't separate them. And feedback is emotional, but that's not the reason not to give it. And we've heard so many personal stories here today. Stories when you received feedback, stories when you did not receive feedback. Stephanie, being a cheerleader, has anyone given you feedback on how that might help or hinder your career? And if the answer is no, well, your boss is not doing his or her job well. How feedback, do we know that people don't receive feedback? Yes, we did the research. 1/3 of leaders, 1/3 said they never give feedback to their employees. So employees are being robbed of development, because self-awareness is a rare commodity. Being aware of my strengths, of my weaknesses, it takes years of work and reflection and feedback. So if I don't know where to improve, no improvement happens. And I heard another word that I really like here: accountability. How can we hold leaders accountable for giving feedback? And if you look at your company, if you look at your leader and you rate them on a scale from 0 to 10, and 0, nothing will happen if you don't give feedback to your employees. To 10, you'll get fired if you don't give feedback to your employees. Where does your company stand? Where does your manager stand? Where do you stand?
Sergey, about this headline, why women are not advancing in a corporate structure, and the role of feedback. You would think the feedback would be like a no-brainer. You know, women are always, this is not negative at all, but women are always talking with each other and always expressing their own opinion on everything, at least in my life. So I would think that it's a natural thing, and women are afraid to speak up. Is that correct?
Men and women are afraid to speak up when they don't feel safe to do so.
I got it. Okay.
But when you do speak up and when you decide to give feedback to your employee, to your manager, to your spouse, to your kid, ask yourself 3 questions. Is my feedback focused? Am I giving feedback on one thing that will really drive the change? Will this piece of information really have the marginal utility for them to become better? Second question, is it credible? Do I have credibility to deliver it? And credibility might come from your personality. It might come from your experience. It might come from the job that you have. Managers naturally have more credibility, or does it come from the facts, the figures, something that you observed, hard data? And finally, is this feedback fair? Because if I give you feedback, oh, you are emotional, well, how does that impact my performance, or how will that impact my career? And if the answer is yes, it will, well, it's a fair feedback to give, because being overly emotional might make you less productive or less effective. If it's not, then maybe it's just my preference, so I should not be giving this feedback. So 3 questions. Is my feedback focused, credible, and fair? And if the answer is yes, go and give it.
Andrew, why don't you sum up here from your view?
Sure. You know, I've been taking some great notes throughout this. I absolutely love that. So, so first and foremost, and forgive me, I'm looking down at my notes right now. So, so what you're just mentioning of credibility in your feedback, I think in many organizations, there's a few different features. So Nazia mentioned a very great thing about, as a team, you should really live and die together. So there's a big piece that we do in our consulting of referring to your team as like a tribe. And if you think about the historical evolutionary context of that, one of the reasons why we're hesitant to give feedback or even receive it is, if you picture us as a hunter-gatherer tribe of 50 people, then if you had an exclusion from that tribe, it literally is life or death. That you have an emotional response that I'm giving this feedback or I'm receiving this feedback that I might be excluded from the tribe, therefore I'm literally going to die. So our modern brains don't necessarily understand the primitive, bodies that we're in, that we have those visceral responses. So in a lot of cases, what I try to do is say to make things as data-based as possible. Because if it's data-based, then it's less emotional. And if you look at feedback as the qualitative portion of the feedback, and then you have the quantitative. So you can look for actual data points. So whenever I've given feedback in the past, then I try to make it data-based and then come with a solution to say, hey, I saw this. This is something that I view that can be used to improve upon that. And within our organizations, and this goes to career advancement, or I think even a helpful trait of how we can improve feedback in general, is first and foremost, we need to understand where people are. And that will usually come in performance reviews. The challenge of performance reviews is they are largely subjective. That we're going and like, I feel this about that person, which is a problem because the feeling of the person isn't data-based. If you're going for a promotion and they're saying, well, you almost had it. It's like, well, why did I not? What can I do to improve? So if you don't get that feedback, and if it's going for an emotional piece of that, you're just, Stephanie, you're just a cheerleader, so we can't promote you up, then that is that's I was about to use a Walmart term of opportunity. So it's a challenge of your leadership. So you want to be able to take the subjective, make it as objective as possible, but still quantify the subjective, quantify that feedback of people's experiences with you, because that's important. That's the reason why we have employee engagement surveys. That's the reason why we collect that qualitative data to understand what someone's experience is, because if we're looking at an environment where we aren't feeling a certain way, that's an important data point. That's as important of a data point as if we're looking at the qualitative data and the actual metrics of business performance and things like that. So you're not just discussing those things that are key business related items. And just to look back my note, then also, of course, in understanding your audience with the intercultural piece. In a lot of cases, we'll just say, this is what we're doing. And obviously people in the US, I think, stereotypically do this much more aggressive, much more direct. But in understanding that we're talking about a collective, that's why I always refer to teams as like a tribe or a village, that we are all in this together. If we can understand what the common objective is, then any feedback that we're giving in this, it's just to make us all better. If we're looking at your advancement with the team and your advancement with the company is in supporting the collective and not just supporting yourself, because we're all ultimately agents of a team or of an organization, that we're there to help them make money. And one item that I use kind of as an interesting analogy, and I use this a lot even in the diversity and inclusion space, is in the middle of the night, you hear a crash in your living room and you're all scared, right? You call the police, you have them come to your house, they look around the house and they can't find anything. Then they leave, and then you hear something again and you call the police again, and police come in, do a search, can't find anything. At that point, are you dealing with a ghost? Like, you need to look for something tangible to attack. And if I can say that this is the problem, then we can tackle it together. So whenever we're having these conversations, in identifying what the challenge is that we're looking to solve, it's much easier than saying something that is either like personal, that someone will immediately get defensive of, or just something generally in the ether that we can't necessarily solve, because if we identify the objective, then we can identify the steps to get there.
Fascinating, Andrew. Thank you. Let's go around the room here quickly, and then we'll have to close. Nazia, thank you very much for being on the show again, and I appreciate your feedback the other day. So I'm sure you found this in that vein of interest that you expressed. Tell us more.
Yes, and I was thinking of why not initiate something educational, some drive for all levels of people to understand how important it is, and it's just not about working from home or digital transformation or diversity inclusion. Like, everybody's for it, but I don't know, but let's talk about feedback. Let's talk about accountability on a more educational, get certified, a better feedback manager, and I believe that if somebody is really interested and serious about it, they'll definitely support regular feedbacks. Because at the end of the year, I'm getting a feedback, it's not a feedback. You were just waiting for to push or put your blame, not having to manage your targets. A regular feedback is the right feedback. Yes, that's my last point.
Thank you. Sergey, so you're going to teach feedback?
We do regularly. across the companies. And I always say that we stop teaching feedback too early. We teach the frontline supervisors, and then we forget about it. We start teaching leading through complexity and strategic thinking, and we take it for granted that people have mastered that. But it's like a muscle. If you don't use it, you forget it. So we absolutely teach it. And I have to say that at the University of Amsterdam, we have created Center for Feedback Culture. And we've hired a full-time PhD researcher just to go to companies and work with them and understand what's feedback culture, how to measure it. And once you can measure it, you can actually drive it forward. So absolutely, the educational effort is necessary. And we're working on that. We understand how important that is.
So you're originally from Russia, now in Madrid, and dealing with an American company. So the methodology and the whole approach is so diverse, isn't it?
And I lived in South Africa, and I lived in Switzerland. So it's, I guess you can call me a rootless cosmopolitan.
A nomad, yeah.
But that makes it better, right? The eclectic approach, because there is no truth. There is no black or white. There is no. We are all. It's all a combination, a collection of something. And as my university professor used to say, as many languages you know, so many times you are a man. And she meant man or a woman back then. But the point was that cultural awareness, the more exposed you are to different cultures, the richer your understanding of different matters in the world.
Well, thank you very much. Mark Colo, do you want to talk about your recent golf tournament? Was that good?
Oh, it was a great tournament, Ed. Thanks for asking. We had 62 golfers show up. We had no COVID cases for the whole day. We were thankful for that. Golf is probably one of the few sports you can do in a COVID environment, because as long as you know your partner you're playing with, you're on the golf carts and you're off on your own most of the time. So it was a great success. We raised more than we expected. And our next event coming up is going to be in the spring of next year. COVID, again, provided COVID is somewhat under control. And that's going to be our walk and talk. And that's going to
this is our favorite charity, findcures.org. And the new name, Mark, is?
findneurohealth.org.
Findneurohealth.org. Okay, that's great. Mark suffers from Parkinson's, and he's a founder of this group. And we are constantly promoting awareness of that. And very happy to have you on the show anytime, Mark.
Thank you, Ed. Can I share one more thought real quick?
Sure.
Yeah, this is just, I think, one indicator of how well you're performing as a manager and how well your rubber's gripping the road, so to speak, can come about by way of group moves. I've done group moves for many, many years. And on average, the amount of employees that remain with a company that leaves a state and goes to another state, on average, you're lucky to keep 10% of the employees. I moved an organization back in the 80s that had 700 employees, and 400 of the employees took the assignment. It was about a 60% acceptance rate when you think about it. You don't see that in business, but they had a mission, and those employees felt like they were contributing to that mission. So maybe that's something to think about as management, is create a mission and get people.
Interesting, right. Sergey, what do you think about that?
When you give someone the why, they'll figure out the what and the how. Everything starts with the person, the purpose and the vision. You get that right.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah. Diane, I'm going to rely on you to do a summary here from a PR point of view. And will you take any of this to your NYU class?
Yes, I will. In fact, I connected with a few of the speakers and I'd like to invite all of you to come speak to my class, because I am determined to give them a really holistic experience this year. This show to me was so valuable and in so many ways. It was a conversation amongst professionals, and we gave one another feedback in the process without even realizing it, giving our opinions and voicing our thoughts, which is really what an open environment is. I think we live in such a changing world right now. Not I think, we all know we're living in a changing world right now. It's exploding before our very eyes. And I think that one of the things that will come out of this is more of a gathering together for different input. Through the landscape of virtual and digital, we are all on one plane. We're all in the corner office. I coined this term proscrenium instead of proscenium for the theater. We are on level field. We are learning to communicate. We are learning that the visual aspect of how we look on a screen impacts the words that we say to one another. And we're growing in respect for each other's fortitude through it all. So thank you for this show.
Yeah, well, thank you for being there. It makes my job easier when I have type A personalities involved. So, so Diane, I just want to ask you as we come to a close here, because of your New York Broadway experience and perspective, it's really a crime that I can't go see Phantom of the Opera live again, but for the umpteenth time. But what's the role of video for the theater?
Well, there's no substitute for live theater, just like there is no substitute for a live meeting or a live event. But to feed our souls with the art form, the theater is exploring and has done an excellent job. I've been to readings. I've seen different plays online. I think it will never be a substitute. It will be an alternative. And if through the digital landscape, more people are exposed to what the concept of theater is, perhaps the appreciation of being there live and seeing someone perform in front of you will increase over time.
So this has been a really good experience for me. Thank you for being on the show. Paul is going to do some plastic surgery on the show, snipping and tucking a little bit, and then we'll be ready to launch it on our website and on the YouTube channel very, very quickly. And then we begin worldwide distribution, targeting corporate human resource people and other executives within companies worldwide, and of course to a variety of services providers. And it's available absolutely free of charge. We are advertiser supported and grateful for the advertising support. We will endeavor to keep the ads into a pocket, if you will, and not be intrusive, and to add value. So thank you. I want to invite you all to come back on a subsequent show. Just so you know, our show tomorrow at 12 noon New York time will be about how networking has been disrupted by COVID and how people can do it better. And we've got some very cool and very young people who have agreed to be on my show to lead the way. And once again, I'm just the host and broadcaster. It's going to be there talking, and it's really going to be interesting. So it's noontime in New York tomorrow, and of course it's free of charge. In November, we already have 11 or 12 shows already booked, including several corporate interviews. And then towards the American Thanksgiving, we're going to do a special show from Stockholm. And it's going to be focused on the Nordic Christmas time spirit. It's going to be a lovely show. Lena Rekdal from Stockholm is going to be our leader, and she's organizing people, and you're all welcome to come. So adios, gracias, amigo. Thank you, Sergey.
Yes,
Thank you.
Nice to meet you, Margaret. Stephanie, thank you very much. Nazia.
Bye, everyone.
Be cool.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us for today's Global TV Talk Show.
Have a wonderful day and stay safe.